I'd like to bring Upper Moreland Township, the regular meeting for October 2nd, to order. First thing is a moment of silence. If you'd please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Randy, if you'd take roll.
Ward 1, Ward 2,
Here.
Ward 3, Ward 4, here. Ward 5,
Here.
Ward 6,
Here.
Ward 7.
Here.
Mr. President, all members of the board are present except for Commissioner Whiting. Also here is Sean Kilkenny, the township solicitor, and myself, the assistant township manager.
Okay, thank you. And I have a feeling Charles Whiting might have tried to get on through Zoom. Our internet is down in the room, so we can't do Zoom tonight. So that might be a reason why he's not here. Any presentations?
No presentations.
With no presentations, first order of business is a public hearing. Mr. Kilkenny, take care of that?
Thank you very much. We have a public hearing tonight.
You need a motion?
So I'd like to hear a motion to open public hearing 1966.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against? Abstain?
Thank you very much, President McFatcher. So we have a public hearing tonight. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is, first of all, ask if anyone here is requesting what's called party status. In a conditional use hearing, the Board of Commissioners sits like a zoning hearing board, a quasi-judicial body. So people that are in an affected area can request party status. Just because you're requesting party status and or you don't request party status does not mean that you can't comment. There'll be an opportunity to comment at the end of these presentation after Mr. McHugh and his experts make a presentation. The board asks questions and you can have an opportunity to comment. But if you're requesting party status, then you have the ability, and it's granted, you have the ability to call your own witnesses and cross-examine some of the witnesses that the applicant may be putting forward. So I wanted to see, is anybody requesting party status? Okay. Can you please identify yourself for the record?
Sandra Richmond, 1505 Sycamore Avenue.
And Ms. Richmond, how far or away are you from the affected property?
My neighborhood is off Blair Mill Road, so less than a mile down Blair Mill Road. I would say 3/4 of a mile. So affected by the traffic patterns for the entry point to this property.
So normally party status is given to those usually within the mailing radius of 500 feet for an application. But I wanted to say what Mr. McHugh might have to say about granting you party status.
Based on the representations, we're fine with her becoming a party to these.
Okay, then the board will grant you party status. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Is anybody else requesting party status? Okay, hearing none, what I'm going to go ahead and do is just explain briefly for the record. So tonight there will be this conditional use application. Mr. McHugh will call witnesses. The board will have an opportunity to query those witnesses. Ms. Richmond will have an opportunity to query those witnesses. There'll be an opportunity for public comment at the end. The board can close the hearing and take action, or the board can close the hearing and wait 45 days for a written decision on this issue, or the board can continue this hearing to a later date if they need more information or they so choose to go ahead and do so. So I'm going to go ahead and mark some exhibits for the record. T1, meaning Township 1, will be a copy of this conditional use application, which will also include the amended application for this conditional use. T2 will be a copy of the advertisement of this conditional use hearing in our newspaper of general circulation. T3 will be a copy of the review by the Montgomery County Planning Commission. T4 will be a copy of Gilmore Engineers' review of this project. T5 will be a review by a traffic review of this application. And T6 will be the review that the APA, or our planning agency or advisory body, made of this application. So that being said, I'm sure Mr. McHugh will have some additional exhibits, but want to turn it over to Mr. McHugh for his conditional use presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Kilkenny. Just as a matter of clarification, I know you marked those T1 through T6. There are multiple reviews by some of those agencies.
Yep.
Are those collective reviews?
We're going to incorporate those, yeah.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay.
Matt McHugh, attorney for the applicant here, for a conditional use hearing for the redevelopment of the Executive Muse complex. We've been before the board and the various planning agencies a number of times, so I think everybody's fairly familiar with the project, and we can get into the technical parts of the conditional use application. So with that being said, I call my first witness, George Hartman from Bowler Engineering.
So I'm sworn.
Sir, do you solemnly swear that the testimony you have to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Could you state your name and spell please for the board?
George Hartman, Georghartman.
Thank you, sir.
And just for the record, I'm handing out Mr. Hartman's CV and a copy of the rendered site plan for this project. Mr. Kilkenny, if we could mark his CV as Exhibit A1.
Sure.
And then just to complete the record, if we could make potentially A2 a copy of the conditional use plans along with any revisions to those plans.
Okay.
While you handed these out, is the copy you just gave us any different than what we had previously in our folders?
That is a new version.
Okay.
It's a rendered version of the revised site layout.
Okay.
So it's different than what you saw a few months, maybe a month or so ago. George, referring you to Exhibit A1, can you first off, do you identify yourself for the record?
George Hartman.
And how are you employed?
I'm a senior project manager at Bowler Engineering.
And are you a licensed professional engineer in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania?
Yes, I am.
And is Exhibit A1 a copy of your curriculum vitae?
Yes,
And have you been qualified as an expert in civil engineering before municipal boards such as the Board of Commissioners?
yes, many times.
I'm happy to go through all of his qualifications, but we would offer him as an expert in civil engineering.
Everybody okay with that?
We're good.
Are you okay with that, Ms. Richmond? You want to ask any questions? Okay, great. So qualified.
And I'll have, what's shown on the board is a rendered site plan. I'll ask that that be marked as Exhibit A3, and copies were provided to the board and Ms. Richmond. George, if you could just orient everybody to the subject property that we're talking about utilizing Exhibit A3.
Sure. The property has frontage on 3 streets, 3 road frontages. The plan, north is top of the page on the plan. So to the east is Computer Avenue. The north road frontage is Maryland Road. And then on the west side of the property, there's road frontage with Blair Mill Road.
And how is that property currently utilized?
So the existing property consists of 3 parcels, and it is currently developed with the Executive Muse office complex, which consists of 13 buildings of various sizes and parking and drive aisles, throughout to support the existing development.
And you mentioned that this is 3 parcels. Was it previously zoned or split zoned O and LI?
Yes, the property was previously split zoned, and the board previously approved to have the zoning for the entire property to be LI.
Okay. And did you prepare a set of conditional use plans which were marked as Exhibit A2 for this property?
Yes, we did.
And is Exhibit A3, which is on the screen, is that a rendered version or a colorized version of those conditional use plans?
Yes, it is.
And can you describe to the board what the proposed development of the subject property entails?
Yes, so the proposed development plans to consolidate the 3 existing parcels into a single parcel, which would be 11.85 acres, demolishing all the existing buildings, redeveloping it into 272-unit multifamily apartment complex consisting of several buildings. The central building, which is H-shaped, is 4-story building with 192 units. There's a clubhouse amenity that's attached to that building is approximately 8,275 square feet. Their perimeter buildings, there's 8 separate buildings, which would each have 10 units, and they have interior parking garages in the 8 perimeter buildings. And there are a total of 425 parking spaces. 329 of those spaces are surface parking scattered throughout the site, with 96 garage spaces within those 8 2-story buildings. Just want to clarify that the perimeter buildings are 2 stories, the central building is 4 stories. Access to the site would be, we would be maintaining the existing access off of Blair Mill Road, and then we would also have an access off of Computer Avenue, which is relocating the existing access slightly further north to get, and provides better separation from the existing access with the Aqua property, which is adjacent.
Now, the site plan that is on the screen right now is slightly different than the board last saw a few months ago. We made some revisions in light of various review comments and planning agency comments. Can you describe just what those revisions are and how the layout has changed somewhat?
Yes. So one of the main things we did was look at what the township considers heritage trees on the site, and we made some revisions to try and maintain some of those trees. So along Computer Avenue on the eastern side of the site, I have the cursor on the plan now, there's a tree, heritage tree that we are looking to maintain. So we revised the parking layout around that area to remove some parking, so that tree can be salvaged.
And if I can stop you right there for a second, George, can you just explain generally what a heritage tree is and what the intent is and what they're trying to, what the township's trying to do with the heritage tree provisions and their ordinances?
Yeah, so it's I mean, the general intent, I believe, is, to maintain existing trees that are of substantial size, 36 inches and greater. So, there was a handful of those trees on the property, and we looked at the ones that were really, that we were able to maintain. So there's one along Computer Avenue that I mentioned, and there's another one on which would be the northwest corner of the property. And we made some modifications to the layout. The 3 buildings on the north side were shifted approximately 30 feet, planned right or to the east. And the retaining wall was adjusted, the location of the retaining wall. Trash enclosure that's in that vicinity was moved up a bit so that we could have an area in that back corner where we're not going to be doing any disturbance. We won't be grading, so that there is a large tree back there that we can maintain. The other somewhat significant adjustment we made was the entrance off of Blair Mill Road. There was a portion that we sort of had 2 parallel drive aisles, and we consolidated that, so it's a single drive aisle, which did also, has the benefit of reducing some impervious coverage and provides us a little bit more room for above ground stormwater management as well.
And that's actually in that area right where you're talking about, it's where the stormwater management basement will be?
Yes.
And that area's been expanded as a result of the, I'll call it the configuration of the driveways?
Correct.
Okay. Now, George, are you aware as whether or not this use is permitted by conditional use in the LI district?
Yes, it is permitted as conditional use.
Okay. And are there certain criteria in section 102V of the ordinance?
Yes.
And I'm going to run through those, and I ask that you answer whether the project complies or not. So there's a requirement that the site contains at least 7 acres of gross lot area in single ownership. Does the site comply with that requirement?
Yes, it does. The consolidated parcel will have 11.5 acres of gross lot area.
Okay, it also requires that the area must be adaptable to apartment complex development, with it being located in relation to major thoroughfares, streets, railroads, public transportation, shopping, or other facilities. And last, that the project have any other physical features, will not have any physical features that tend to destroy the neighbor or community cohesiveness. Does the project comply with that requirement?
Yes, it does. The subject property is located in an area that is adaptable to apartment complex development. It has access from 2 major local roads, Blair Mill Road and Computer Avenue, and is within close proximity to Route 63, Moreland Road, and the Willow Grove entrance to the Pennsylvania Turnpike. There are large shopping centers within walking distance to the property along Route 63, and the area is also serviced by public transportation in the form of access to SEPTA bus routes that further connect to regional rail. The immediate vicinity of the property will not be negatively affected by an apartment complex development, and such development is compatible with the surrounding uses.
The ordinance also requires that the buildings must be served by public sanitary sewage and public water, and that all utilities in the development are underground. Does the project comply with that?
Yes, the development will be served by public water and sewer, and utilities will be located underground.
There's also a requirement that the subject property be provided with at least one secondary or emergency exit in addition to the main entrance. Can you identify whether there are multiple entrances and exits here?
Yes, there are 2 access points to the property. One full movement access point off of Blair Mill Road and one full movement access on Computer Avenue.
Okay. And there's also a requirement that the site contain at least one underutilized or abandoned commercial or industrial building, which shall be removed or redevelopment as a requirement of the development of the site. Does the project comply with that requirement?
Yes. The subject property is the Executive Muse Office Complex, which is an underutilized commercial office complex. 6 of the existing 13 buildings and 64 out of 71 office suites are completely vacant, and the remaining buildings and suites are partially vacant. The existing buildings will be demolished, and the subject property will be redeveloped in accordance with the plans.
Okay. There's a maximum residential density of 18 units per gross acre of lot area, unless increased by conditional use approval further down in the ordinance, up to 25 units per acre. Does the project comply with that requirement?
The applicant seeking conditional use approval pursuant to Section 350-102 V3C of the zoning ordinance, which would allow a maximum residential density of 25 dwelling units per gross acre by providing on-site community, recreational, and similar facilities for the residents of the apartment complex. And the plan proposes 23 dwelling units per acre.
So there's also a requirement that interior driveways and aisles must have a minimum width of 24 feet and not be offered for dedication to the township, but comply with otherwise with all codes and ordinances. Does the project comply with that requirement?
Yes, it does. All the interior driveways drive aisles will be minimum 25 feet wide. They will be privately owned and maintained in accordance with all applicable public safety and fire code requirements.
There's also a requirement that building coverage for both principal and accessory buildings shall not exceed 35% of the gross lot area. Does the project comply with that requirement?
Yes, the proposed building coverage for principal and accessory uses is 25.7% of the gross lot area.
And there's also a requirement that the impervious coverage shall not exceed 65% of the gross lot area. Does the project comply with that?
Yes, it does. The impervious coverage is 63.9%.
Okay. And in connection with this conditional use application, did you prepare a stormwater management report?
Yes, we did.
And although the stormwater design is not complete, you'll continue to work with the township engineer and the township on stormwater management controls.
Yes, we will.
And I think it's a requirement of the ordinance that you'll work with the engineer regarding best management practice and O&M requirements for the stormwater management.
Correct.
Okay. There's also a requirement that no building or structure shall be closer than 25 feet to any property line and 50 feet to the ultimate right-of-way of bordering existing public roads with certain exceptions. Does the project comply with that requirement?
It does. All principal and accessory buildings are located outside of the applicable perimeter setbacks. The proposed maintenance building is located between the front of a building unit and the street line for Blair Mill Road. However, given that the subject property fronts on 3 roads, the applicant believes the location of the proposed maintenance building meets the spirit and intent of the requirement.
So with respect to that particular building, there would really be no location that you could put an accessory building on this site because of the front yards? Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. The project also has a requirement that no 2 buildings shall be closer than 25 feet to one another at any point along the external walls. Do we comply with that requirement?
Yes. The closest distance between 2 buildings is 40.5 feet.
There's a maximum building height requirement of 70 feet with not more than 4 floors of residential occupancy. Does the project comply with that requirement?
Yes, we have no more than 4 floors, and the height will be less than 70 feet.
Okay. In addition to any fee in lieu of recreational amenities, the ordinance requires provisions for walking trails, gardens, and gathering places, and if appropriate, connections to existing or future township and countywide trails. Do we comply with that requirement?
Yes, the applicant's providing internal and external sidewalk and pedestrian connectivity in various locations throughout the subject's property, along with amenity space for the apartment complex residents that includes a pool area and a dog park. Applicant will coordinate with the township to assess potential connections to existing and/or future township or countywide trails, but we're not aware of any logical connection points at this time.
And that's something that can continue to be discussed during the land development process.
Yes, absolutely.
There's a parking requirement of basically 1.5 off-street parking spaces for each dwelling unit. Do we meet that requirement?
We do.
And what is the total parking count?
There's a total of 424 bedrooms. We have 425 parking spaces, 329 surface, and 96 garage spaces, which equates to 1 space per bedroom and 1.56 per dwelling unit.
Okay. Will the source of any exterior spotlighting or floodlighting of buildings or grounds be visible from off the developed site?
No, there are no spotlights or floodlights proposed.
And that's in conformance with the conditional use requirements for this use?
Yes.
Okay. There's also a requirement that the project try to preserve existing or incorporate new natural features, streams, and open spaces. Does the project comply with this requirement?
Yes, the proposed development's designed where possible to preserve existing trees and/or incorporate new natural features and open space areas, which adds to the overall cohesive development of the district and overall township development.
And as you discussed previously, the heritage trees, is that a design feature that is meant to incorporate and comply with this requirement of the conditional use requirements?
Yes.
There's a requirement that all recreational service and parking areas shall be effectively screened from abutting lots or right-of-ways by a planted buffer of not less than 10 feet in width. Do we have that on the plans?
Yes, applicant's proposing 10-foot wide landscape buffer along all property lines. And specific landscape details are provided within sheet C702 and C703 of the conditional use plans.
There's provisions regarding signage. Is it the applicant's intent to comply with the signage requirements in the ordinance?
Yes, it is.
And there's no proposed signage right now as part of this package?
Not at this time.
Okay. There's a requirement regarding phasing or staging of development. Is it the applicant's intent to develop this property in a single phase or stage?
Yes, it is.
Okay. There's a requirement the fire hydrants shall be required in such quantities and locations as recommended by the fire marshal. Has the fire marshal reviewed this plan?
Yes, they have.
And is it our intention to comply with that requirement?
Yes.
Okay. The ordinance requires an appropriate area or areas shall be provided for the storage of snow from the complex. Do we intend to comply with that requirement?
Yes, we do.
And can you indicate generally where you think snow can be stored on this site?
Yes, to the western side of the property, the green area, which is intended to be the above-ground stormwater basin, is a fairly large area that we believe would be able to be used for snow storage during winter months.
Okay. There's also a requirement for appropriate sidewalk connections to existing sidewalks to be provided. I know you spoke briefly about sidewalk. Can you just identify the various exterior sidewalk connections that are planned for this project?
Yes, we're providing, or proposing to have sidewalks along all street frontages on Blair Mill Road, Computer Avenue, and Maryland Road.
Okay.
That's their,
There's a requirement that lighting fixtures should not exceed 14 feet in height when located near pedestrian ways or within 50 feet of an abutting residential use. Does the project comply with that requirement?
Yes, it does.
There's also a requirement that foundation planning shall be utilized to enhance the entrances to each building. Is the applicant prepared to comply with that requirement?
Yes.
You mentioned briefly about density. There's a separate conditional use approval. The applicant is seeking to increase the density of up to 25 dwelling units per acre. That is by providing on-site community recreational or similar facilities for the residents of the complex. Can you just describe those facilities that enable us to seek that 25 dwelling units per acre?
Yes, applicants proposing outdoor recreational facilities such as the pool and the dog park. Indoor recreation is part of the clubhouse amenity, which would include fitness center, yoga and spinning classes, and game room. And the total proposed density is 23 dwelling units per acre.
Okay, in your professional opinion, does the proposed development comply with the conditional use requirements of the ordinance?
Yes, it does.
And in your professional opinion, will the proposed use be compatible with the character of the neighborhood and the use of property adjacent to the areas, and the proposed use will be adequately safeguarded?
Yes, I think for all the reasons we've just gone through, yes.
Those are all the questions I have of Mr. Hartman. I'm happy to make him available for any questions from the board, but I also have other witnesses.
I would say run through all your witnesses and then
Sure.
it might eliminate questions later.
That would be great. Thank you.
Is that okay with you, Ms. Richmond? Okay.
Next, I would call Peter Clellan. George, can you put up the rendering? Yeah. Are they all in the same file? Yeah, they're just all in the same file, Pete. Okay. Pete, if you could identify yourself for the record.
Sorry, to sound right, testifying about the kid, the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the true self. You got it?
Yes.
State your name, spell, please.
Peter Cleland, Cleland.
And Pete, how are you employed?
I'm the Vice President of Development at BET Investments.
And are you an authorized representative of BT Blair LLC?
Yes,
And is BT Blair LLC the owner of the 3 parcels that are the subject of this conditional use application?
it is, yes.
We have up on the screen what I'll ask be marked as Exhibit A4, which are exterior renderings of the proposed development. Did you have these commissioned?
We did, following the previous meeting review where we were asked to provide better renderings. We had provided in the original package straight-on elevations of all the buildings to demonstrate the strict compliance with the ordinance as far as the application of materials and variations in exterior finishes. But we were asked to provide more realistic renderings, so we had our architect provide several views, which we'll go through here, of the project mainly from exterior of the site. So the one that we're looking at on the screen right now was prepared to illustrate the project as it would appear from the intersection of Computer Avenue and Maryland Road. So in the center of the picture, you see the clubhouse attached to the main building, the clubhouse being the two-story section of the building, and the four-story section adjacent to that being the central building that George previously described as the H-shaped building in the middle of the site. And on the left and right sides of the page, you can see the two-story buildings that flank the main building. And George there, page down. Okay. This is another image. This from Maryland Road, kind of Computer Avenue would be back to your left side of the page. Again, the clubhouse being the shorter section in the center part of the page with the four-story building adjacent to it. This is an interior image from the parking area adjacent to the clubhouse and pool area, showing the courtyard between the buildings as well as the pool area in the center, the dog park just off to the left, fenced in around that adjacent building. This image again is from the parking lot area to show what one of the interior streets looks like along the boulevard between the two-story building and the four-story building, with the garage parking at those perimeter two-story buildings. And then finally, this is from slightly inside the site, kind of in the stormwater basin area, looking into the project from the Blair Mill Road side of the project. Again, with the two-story buildings on the right and the four-story building further in the background in the center of the site.
And these are all renderings that were submitted with the last set of plans, and they haven't changed?
Correct.
Okay. And then, Pete, I know there's just some technical conditional use criteria I need to go over with you regarding the architecture. The ordinance requires the development to be constructed in accordance with an overall plan and a common architectural theme. Do we believe we comply with that requirement?
We do, yes.
The ordinance also requires that variations in facades shall be utilized, that there shall be variations in roof lines shall be used to screen HVAC equipment to provide interest and reduce the scale of buildings. The roofs should provide a variety of vertical dimensions. Multi-plane and intersecting roof lines are encouraged. Visible flat roof designs are prohibited. Do we comply with that requirement?
We believe that we do. I'm rolling back to one of the better images just to show those variations in roof lines, as well as the sense that we don't have we don't have the perception of flat roofs on any of the buildings. And we've provided this variation in architectural interest as well as setbacks in the facade of the building along all the various frontages.
The ordinance has a list of materials of dominant exterior materials that may be permitted and may not be permitted, and a requirement that at least 60% or greater of each building elevation shall comprise of those permitted dominant materials. We submitted architectural elevations, which I'd ask be marked as Exhibit A5. Do those plans show the various permitted dominant materials and the permitted percentages?
They do, yes, as well as compliance with those requirements.
Are all ground-mounted exposed HVAC units screened from view through the use of masonry walls or landscaping?
They will be, yes.
And as I mentioned, Exhibit A5, you've submitted schematic architectural plans and elevations?
Yes.
And is there a plan that depicts the amenities that was submitted with the conditional use application? Is that included in Exhibit A5? Yes.
I believe it is, yes.
I believe those are all the questions I have for Mr. Clellan.
These are the amenity sheets. That's the first floor of the clubhouse, second floor of the clubhouse.
Next one, this will be David Babbitt.
Sir, Thomas, for assessment of the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the
I do.
State and spell please for the board.
David Babbitt, Babbitt, of Babbitt and Associates.
Just for the record, I'm submitting a copy of Mr. Babbitt's CV and a copy of the planning analysis that he prepared. I ask that those be marked as Exhibit A6 and A7 respectively.
Thank you.
David, your CV was submitted as Exhibit A6, but are you a certified land planner in Commonwealth of Pennsylvania?
Yes, I am.
And as you can see from Mr. Babbitt's CV, it's about 7 or 8 pages long. He has extensive experience. We can certainly go through each of his qualifications, but have you been engaged as a land planner for municipalities and private developers over the years?
Yes, including this one.
Okay. And are you familiar with reviewing and applying conditional use ordinances and criteria?
Yes, I am.
Okay. I would ask that he be qualified as an expert in land planning.
Okay with you?
Yes, sir.
Richmond? Is that okay with you? Yes. Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Mr. Babbitt, you did prepare a planning analysis for this project?
Yes, I did.
And if you could just briefly summarize for the board what that planning analysis went over.
This is dated May 15th, 2023. Discusses the 3 properties that are the subject of this application, the proposed development. It discusses the zoning of the site. The site is now zoned all I, limited industrial district, which is consistent with the properties around it. We have a combination of commercial and industrial zoning in this area. The only residents in this area are in the other apartment building. It's about not even a block away along the turnpike. Everything else is a business surrounding this property, which makes sense because it was designed as a business complex. The only thing that's not, technically speaking, a business or could be considered something in between would be the Lightbridge Academy, a daycare center that's on Blair Mill Road, adjacent to the site to the northeast. Other than, again, the American Legion post across the street, everything else is either commercial or industrial.
Okay. And are you familiar with the township's comprehensive plan?
I am.
Okay. And are you familiar with the various conditional use requirements for the development of an apartment complex in the LI district?
Yes, I am.
Okay. And in your professional opinion, is the proposed use generally consistent with the policies and objectives set forth in the comp plan?
It is. The 2020 comp plan has this area in the EC Employment Center future land use area, which calls for a variety of businesses, but also apartments to service those businesses. There are also recommendations regarding housing to allow or continue to allow apartments in these areas to allow people to live close to their places of work. And the proposal is in compliance and supports that goal. Finally, the goal 11G of the economic development plan is to have the redevelopment of underutilized or vacant sites, and of course this is one. The recommendation is to permit a variety of uses in place of these underutilized sites, such as apartments, and the development complies with that as well.
And you're familiar with, obviously, the site plan that's been prepared and the various different renderings that are being shown?
Yes.
And in your professional opinion, will the project subject neighboring properties to objectionable noise, lighting, glare, or other disturbance?
No, again, surrounding this property is pretty much all businesses.
In your professional opinion, will the design of the proposed development minimize adverse effects, including visual impacts on adjacent properties?
Yes, it will.
And to your knowledge, does the proposed use comply with all the regulations of the zoning ordinance, including the bulk requirements?
Yes.
The bulk requirements? And
Yes.
finally, last conditional use requirement, does the proposed use unduly burden sanitary sewer facilities, school, police, fire, park, stormwater management, or other public facilities or services?
No, I believe it will not unduly burden these services.
And are you familiar with the Bucks County Planning Commission's review letters?
Montgomery County.
Montgomery County Planning Commission review letters. So I get for being a Bucks County guy.
Yes, I am familiar with it. Yes.
The Montgomery County Planning Commission review letters for this project.
Yes, in particular, the one that just came out on the 29th of September, last week.
Right, there is a specific, I guess, conclusion that's been in both of those review letters that indicates that they believe that we meet the specific ordinance criteria, but not the overall intent of the LI district and the requirements for an apartment complex. Can you discuss why you believe we do meet the intent?
Well, the intent is pretty clear, and that is to encourage the redevelopment of existing vacant or underutilized business buildings for a variety of purposes, including businesses or apartments, in order to increase and improve the township's tax base and improve the ability of people to find housing close to their places of work.
And that was the intent at the time that the ordinance amendment permitting apartment uses in this district was adopted.
Yes, that's my understanding.
And that's the
correct.
current intent that's in effect as of today.
Yes, that ordinance is in effect right now, yes.
That's all the questions I have for Mr. Babbitt.
Thank you.
Last I'll call Guy DiMartino.
Swear to solemnly swear that the testimony about to give is the truth, the whole
Thank
truth,
you.
and nothing but the truth, so
I do.
stating this all.
Yes, Guy DiMartino, last name is spelled Dimartino.
Let the record reflect, I've handed out Mr. DiMartino's CV, which I believe will be Exhibit A8. And Mr. DiMartino, can you just describe how you're employed?
I'm employed by Traffic Planning and Design, Inc. I'm a regional leader in transportation planning.
And are you the traffic engineer for this project?
Yes,
And have you previously been qualified as an expert in traffic engineering and design before boards of commissioners and other regional municipal bodies?
I have, including this municipality.
Okay. So again, I would ask Mr. DiMartino to be qualified as an expert in that regard. Happy to go through his CV if needed.
It's okay, Ms. Richmond, is that okay with you too?
Okay. Mr. DiMartino, did you prepare a transportation impact assessment for the project?
Yes,
And I'd ask that that be marked as Exhibit A9. It was submitted under separate cover to the township as part of the review process. As part of the conditional use ordinance, does that TIA address the following things? The impact of the proposed project on traffic in the area, adequacy of adjoining streets to accommodate projected traffic, and the recommendations for the solution of any traffic issues which are expected to result from the project?
yes.
And can you summarize the findings and the process in which the TIA was created?
Sure. So the traffic study was initiated through the scoping process where we reached out to both the township traffic engineer and PennDOT to set the parameters of the traffic study, meaning where we conducted traffic counts, the methodologies that went into those to conducting the traffic study. So as you heard earlier this evening, the site's situated between Blair Mill Road and Computer Avenue, just south of Maryland Avenue. We evaluated the site driveways as well as the Computer Avenue and Maryland Road intersection as part of our traffic study, and went through the typical procedures and standards of conducting a traffic study. In doing so, we determined that the proposed application, the proposed development will generate 121 new trips during the weekday morning peak hour and 130 new trips during the weekday PM peak hour.
Now, can you just explain how that compares to the existing executive muse complex and how that is calculated or assessed in context with the traffic impact assessment?
Certainly. So as you heard, the site, as it sits today, is not fully occupied with its current office use, but the site is a total 87,000 square feet of existing office space. If that office space was fully occupied, that use, 87,000 square feet of office space, would generate 149 new trips in the weekday morning peak hour and 148 new trips during the weekday PM peak hour.
So for purposes of creating the traffic study, you look at and assume that that traffic will be completely built out and there'll be traffic associated with all 100% occupancy of the office complex?
Yes,
Okay. And is it possible that that would then generate more trips than what is proposed for the apartment complex?
that's true. It would. It would generate 28 more trips in the morning and 18 more trips in the evening peak hour.
Okay. And as far as the conditional use requirements, are you familiar with those for the apartment complex?
Yes.
In the context of traffic, the ordinance speaks to, will the proposed use or change have a harmful effect on local vehicular or pedestrian traffic due to any of the following? Expected peak hour traffic generated by the proposed use or a change. Is your professional opinion that there will not be a negative impact from that?
That is correct.
And the location of entrance, exit, and emergency driveways, is it your professional opinion there will not be a negative impact on those?
That's correct.
And the design and capacity of parking facilities, is it your professional opinion there will not be a negative impact from that?
Correct.
Do you believe, upon your review, that there's adequate parking for the proposed development?
Yes, and as you've prior testimony indicated, we will satisfy the ordinance requirement.
Okay. And are you familiar with the traffic review letter from McMahon?
I am.
And to your knowledge, are there any issues that can't be addressed during land development,
No, we will address those comments.
including any recommendations that are part of your traffic impact assessment?
That's accurate, yes.
Okay. I have no further questions. For any of those are all my witnesses, so we'd open up to the board and to any of the parties for any questions they may have.
Okay, why don't we, while we have the traffic up here, anybody from the board want to address any questions for traffic?
I just will note on the traffic side, when we were here before the CDC, we had done a trip generation analysis, which wasn't the full traffic study. And the request was that we go back and perform the actual full traffic study. So we went through that process in the last 2 months since we've seen you guys.
Have you had feedback, is PennDOT okay with your entrances? Obviously, I haven't done permits yet, but with the Blair Mill Road side, because the other side is ours.
Right.
So it would be Blair Mill would be the only PennDOT part. Did we get any negative comments from PennDOT for Blair Mill side?
There are no negative comments from PennDOT. What the one comment they did ask with respect to that driveway is currently there's a separate left turn lane and a right turn lane. As you exit that driveway, they ask for what's referred to as a pork chop island to separate those two movements, but which is something I certainly will comply with as we work through the PennDOT permit process. But there was no, I'll say no roadblocks indicating that access could not be provided.
So separate with striping?
They would be separated with a concrete, a mountable island, concrete island.
Thank you for revising this or performing a more comprehensive study. McMahon's letter that came out on the 27th, so a week ago, had 3 requests under transportation impact assessment. Following conditions should be revised in the capacity levels of service worksheets. The testimony that you gave this evening, does that take into account these 3 requests on page 2 of 4 of their?
So you're talking about comment number 8?
I am talking about, yes, comment number 8, and there's the 3 bullet points underneath that.
So the testimony I gave tonight does account for that with the respect that those comments will not change the amount of traffic that's anticipated to be generated. But certainly we will be addressing those comments when we revise the traffic study. Once we get additional comments back from PennDOT, we'll complete a revised traffic study. But the findings of our traffic study in general, this site will have a negligible impact in terms of traffic.
So let's just follow up. What I think you're asking about is level of service calculations that are provided in part of the TIA. And right now, we are within PennDOT standards.
Correct.
And your answer to Mr. Prowse is that those changes will not impact whether we still comply with PennDOT standards?
We will still comply with PennDOT standards with making those changes.
Okay, because the things that stand out in my mind, and not being an expert in this, but relying on the experts that we speak to about these are requesting that, where was the exact language? Reassess basically approaches during the weekday morning and weekday afternoon peak hours at the intersections. So, and called out specifically our Computer Avenue and Maryland. So can you provide a little bit more clarity to put me at peace that reassessing both morning and weekday peak hours at a major intersection is not going to affect your numbers in a negative way?
Right, and so these comments are referring to I'll say the analysis software that we use. I'm getting kind of detailed in this response. And there's some ways the inputs were coded in the analysis. They're requesting some modifications to those. And it's just the way it shows up on the printouts. I know from doing this for many years, those changes will not have an impact on the analysis. What we did in our analysis, we have to, when I say there's no impact today, from the basis of our analysis, we look at the incremental impact of this application to determine if there's no impact. So all these changes that will have to be made under current conditions, and then they'll be applied to the future conditions. So it's still going to be the same incremental impact, even with these changes. That's why, with confidence, I can say we will still satisfy the PennDOT requirements and the township requirements.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, when I look at this drawing, the plan that we're given here, it looks to me like the ultimate right-of-way is not dedicated on this plan. Can you,
That might be a better question for the civil engineer.
it's got to do with traffic, though. It's Blair Mill, it's a PennDOT highway, but go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, as far as I know, the right-of-way for Blair Mill is dedicated. I mean, I don't think that the right-of-way line is not anticipated to change as part of this application. It exists on Blair Mill.
So I'm talking about the curb area between Lighthouse Bridge and your entrance.
Okay. What specific question, I guess, are you
So
asking?
we have ultimate dedication of right-of-way from Lighthouse Bridge. We know that there's work being done on Blair Mill Road. And I didn't see sidewalks there either.
The plan doesn't show sidewalks on Blair Mill, but as indicated earlier, we are intending to provide sidewalks at Blair Mill.
Bingo.
Regarding the right-of-way along Blair Mill Road, that was a comment from both your township traffic engineer and PennDOT with regard to the future plans of Blair Mill Road with Horsham Township. Their plans to widen that Blair Mill Road in this area. So that's something that we will have to address and work through and coordinate. We're still trying to get those plans from the Horsham Township. But that is something we know we will have to work with both your township traffic engineer and PennDOT as we go through the permitting process for that access point to Blair Mill Road.
The ultimate right-of-way is shown on the plan. The net lot area calculations are done to that line, and we are happy to accept any condition of approval that requires the dedication as PennDOT sees fit in that area. And I think that the other comment that George is making is that, again, as a condition of approval, we're happy to accept the condition that we install the sidewalk along that side.
So
just by, identifying the comments we talked about earlier about the division of the lanes and where you're going to access Blair Mill Road, you can see in the bottom of the building, the curb line from the Walmart,
Yes.
and that is in line with the ultimate right-of-way, and you actually occupy the ultimate right, a lot of the right-of-way with that proposal.
The ultimate right-of-way line is essentially right at the front of this existing concrete.
I'm looking
aisle.
about the green space above that.
Right.
I specifically said between your driveway and Lightbridge.
Right.
Yes.
And there's nothing proposed in that area. I mean,
That will be part of the
Is
Blair
that-
Mill
is
Road
that
widening
green
project.
area
It's-
used as a impervious calculation?
No.
No.
Okay. For traffic, we know that the principals of this property have heavily invested in the idea of a turnpike interchange at Moreland Road, 63. Was there any consideration about traffic access to and from the turnpike via that proposal?
No.
I'm good.
I will clarify their offer of the sidewalk and right-of-way.
Yep.
So you'll make that, we'll have.
We'll
that as
put
a
that,
condition.
when there is, a written decision, we'll make sure the board reviews that. I'll talk to Mr. McHugh and make sure it's clarified, and that it will be a condition. Yeah.
Good.
And
Thank
that's
you.
agreeable to us.
Yep.
Anyone else? Sam? John?
Just for
Any
traffic or
comments?
other?
For traffic right now? No? Anybody from the public that would like to address the traffic engineer? You have to come up, you'll get sworn in, and you can ask whatever questions to address it to them, because they're the ones making the case. Anybody on the right side, or right, you're.
Ms. Richmond should go first, but she's a party.
Okay.
Do you want to swear her in? Sure.
Yes. Sandra Richmond. I heard what you said about there being no impact to the traffic. You need to understand, I don't find that believable. I've listened to the presentations of numerous projects coming before the board, all claiming there's no impact to traffic. From a practical standpoint, that is not believable. I don't understand your methodology, but something isn't sitting right with me when you say that 272 units will not impact the area.
I don't believe you had a question. Was that just a comment?
Unless you can explain to me why your methodology is accurate?
What doesn't Mr. DiMartino just comment as to his methodology? That's your question, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, if you can try to.
Sure. As part of preparing any traffic study and developing traffic for a specific use, like this one, there's a standard manual that we're required to use, that PennDOT requires us to use, that the township traffic engineer requires us to use. Based on that manual, that is what we use to determine how much traffic would be generated for this specific use. So we're held to those standards. The traffic that I stated tonight has been reviewed by both your township traffic engineer and PennDOT, and they find it acceptable.
So can you say again how many weekday trips this will generate?
During the morning, it is 121 new trips. That's the AM peak hour, and during the evening peak hour, it's 130. new
Even though
trips.
there's 272 units, apartments? Yeah, how does that?
It's during peak hour.
It's during a 1 hour, a 60-minute period.
Right.
And when you refer to new trips, you're talking about in addition to ones you already have on that site?
No, he's
No,
comparing it.
that's new is just a term that's used in the traffic engineering world, but that's not. If it was, actually, it would be a reduction if we compared it to the existing site at full occupancy. But
At
new,
maximum capacity, but it's nowhere near that. Nor was it at maximum capacity when we did our 209 study.
Mr. Spirit, are you saying total for the day, or are you saying during peak hour?
During peak hour, during a 1 hour period in the morning.
Okay. So in other words, there could be more traffic or more in and out during a 24-hour period. But by standards of the state, and that we have to measure it an hour in the morning and an hour in the afternoon during peak times. That's how it is rated. That's by the laws of PA.
Okay.
So I believe you, we're going to get some more cars coming in and out, but it gets rated by those peak times.
Okay.
For comparison's sake, can you reiterate the numbers from the full occupancy of the executive muse during those peak hours against the peak hour rates that you calculated for this new development?
Sure. So during the AM peak hour, this proposed application would generate 121 new trips. If you were to, during that same peak hour, if you compare it to the office use at full occupancy, it would be 149 new trips. The same comparison during the weekday PM peak hour, this proposed application, 130 new trips versus 148 for the office at full capacity.
Okay, thank you.
I have one more
I just
question.
wanted to offer one more piece of information. So as came up in the one review letter with regard to when the 209 study was performed and the occupancy at that time, we have not submitted this information, but we were able to obtain from prior ownership, because we've only owned this for a couple years now, that at that time in 2017, it was occupied at 77%. So it was not 100%, but it was a lot closer than it is now.
Okay. I have a question for Mr. DiMartino. So we made references to other properties in the area, specifically the other apartments at 2405 Computer or Maryland Road. Do you happen to know what how many apartments that was?
I don't know offhand. I do not know.
I think it would be a fair comparison. It's pretty close to the same number of apartments, and I'd be curious to know how many new trips that property generated. I would thought you would have that available as comparison, since it was already mentioned.
So we did consider that the portion of that development that is not constructed, we did factor that into our traffic study, but I don't know how many. We did not perform counts at that existing facility to see the operations of it.
It's 246.
Thank you.
Question about sidewalks. The triangle right next to the warehouse at the very top of the building, who owns that triangle? Do you own it, or does the warehouse own it?
Yeah.
Okay. I was wondering if sidewalks were going to be.
The green one.
The green triangle. Oh, in the corner.
Well, and
For traffic, what is the white box going across, let's say 100 feet down or so down, there you have a white box going across the road? Upper right corner.
it's just a dimension label, I think, right?
Yeah.
Lane widths.
It's not a crosswalk or anything? Okay, just a label.
It's just a
Oh,
label.
it's a label.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You want a crosswalk?
There ain't no crosswalks looked on that, but that's okay, we'll talk about that later. Don't be so.
Okay. Any other questions from the public on traffic? Either side of the room? No?
Have we done complete traffic counts at that intersection? We have those numbers.
Which intersection?
Maryland and Computer.
Yes, we have. It's included in our traffic study.
Curious as to what the warrants are for a traffic light, and how close are we?
Okay. we can look at that. Mr. Shannon, you had a question? I guess you're standing up.
Comment, actually, two of them. For you.
You're going to swear in Mr. Shannon?
I do. Brian Shannon. One, we did identify the ultimate right-of-way issue in the APA meeting twice, just for the record, that it's going to cause a clash future on as we widen Blair Mill Road. So it may in fact have an impact on this. Secondarily, on the traffic impact study, I read it, I analyzed it. I guess I question your math, because what you did is went up to full occupancy on, excuse me, went up to full occupancy on the existing facility and then did your study underneath it to come up with a net number that was lower than. Really has to be looked at from a current occupancy level.
Okay, take your time. And is that, and this might go to Sean, what is our legal way of looking at it? Do we look at what the actual occupancy should have been, if it is, or if it's blighted and only 50% occupied?
We should look at what the actual occupancy, we shouldn't take the blighted into account. We should look at what the actual occupancy is.
Okay.
So it's been more than 4 years. Yeah. All right, as far as the occupancy level, it's been a flat occupancy level for 4 years. Not what it could be, all right, but what it actually is. That's my understanding.
If I could just briefly respond.
I think they said 77%.
We were at 77% in 2017.
That was appointed at the 209.
Right, but realistically speaking, if we weren't to propose a development here, we wouldn't just let this site continue to be vacant and blighted. We would attempt to occupy it, and then would get to at some point 100% occupancy. So I think that's why there's some efficacy in that.
And I think what we're looking at is for Act 209, and that's, I don't know the actual, but on our Act 209, which our traffic guy would have to come up with, engineer.
Yeah.
The difference is from 100% occupied to your 100% occupied. I don't know.
So there's a fee conversation, and then there's a traffic conversation, right? From a traffic planning perspective, they look at full occupancy of the property because, we could undercharge lease rates and fill the place up and make it fully occupied the way that it is, and it would generate that traffic. Okay. Right? So from a trip generation standpoint, for his purposes, that's how we have to look at it. Then there's the traffic impact fee perspective of it as far as what we're going to pay into the 209 study fees. And that's where the engineer's review letter says, show us how it was occupied in 2016, 17 versus what it is, versus what the fee is calculated based on. And his new trips that he identified for the site don't discount anything off of those. So, so that's where there's sort of two different conversations.
Okay.
And as far as the right-of-way comment and question, again, the ultimate right-of-way line that we have shown on this drawing is more than adequate to accommodate the Blair Mill Road widening project that's in its design phases. I mean, you can see from the Lightbridge Academy's parking lot area, our line is further back than where their parking is. And PennDOT is certainly not going to take all of their parking in that front row as part of their widening project. So, in fact, I would venture a guess that they're actually going to take less right-of-way.
I don't necessarily agree with that. They have an island out there. If you put a curb in front of their parking where it exists now, their first line of parking, if you put a curb in front of that, you protrude into the highway much more than they do. See where the red car is? If you slam a curb up there and you have highway there, right.
If you project that through, that's going to go right through those parking spaces. PennDOT is not going to widen the road all the way to here. They're going to stay at least 5 feet away from those parking spaces.
Are you testifying for PennDOT now? They have already pledged the ultimate right-of-way for this project. So I don't know why you can actually say that PennDOT won't go there.
Well, if they have already provided the ultimate right-of-way.
Yes.
Then you certainly did not allow them to build within the ultimate right-of-way, their parking spaces.
How many years has that been there? We're much closer to widening Blair Mill Road than we've ever been. So now it's a factor. When that was built, it wasn't reality.
Okay, look, I'm not trying to argue with
No,
you.
you came to me with this telling me that they would have to take away parking spaces. I'm looking at the line, if they slammed the curb there, right in front of the parking spaces, they wouldn't have to lose any parking spaces. And the rest was highway. It would be, what you have presented to us is protruding into the highway. And the driveways that are built there aren't accommodated to that. In other words, the curve of your driveway should come back to the ultimate right away and show a curb with, with your radius.
Are you asking for physical road improvements or right-of-way lines? That's where I just want to be clear.
I asked for it to be presented here, and the APA actually has just identified that they asked twice for that. Look,
we believe that we have showed the ultimate right-of-way that is applicable to the project out there. If it's determined that another 5 feet of right-of-way is required, we are more than happy to grant that.
I'm just responding to your comments about the neighboring property, okay? And your testimony on behalf of PennDOT that you really don't know.
Well, I think Mr. Clellan's point is that the right-of-way line that we're showing right now, if you pull it north through the Lightbridge Academy property, is going to be into their parking area. So assuming that they take all the way to our right-of-way, that would include affecting their parking. And we believe that's appropriate right-of-way. If we need to provide more, we can certainly look at that. I think that's a land development issue more than anything else.
You covered it at jump, thank you very much. But then when you started talking about PennDOT and the neighboring property.
No, understood.
And we do have the condition of that.
Yes.
So, any other questions for traffic for Mr. DiMartino? Okay.
It's not a question, but it's a statement. I think a couple other folks here said it. This is a different type of use. And so peak hour qualifications, although responding to guidelines and being implemented in the way that experts are telling us to implement them, the numbers will be increased for traffic outlet onto these neighboring roads on those non-peak hour times, because you're looking at residences versus businesses. And so I do think that the traffic numbers are a concern and something that we should think about in conjunction with the AM, PM peak hours and the traffic impact fees that are part of McMahon's study.
And I'll just note, as part of the conditional use process, we kind of went ahead a level at your request to get this traffic impact study. So these are things that the comments in the McMahon letter, the 209 credits, right-of-way line, those things, those calculations are usually kind of smoothed out at land development. So we're sort of ahead of the game. We provided a more detailed study so you guys could have an understanding of what you were looking at, but we'll continue, obviously, to work with McMahon and the consultant reviews as we go through land development on those traffic items. This is not the end of the traffic discussion.
Yeah, sure thing. Sure.
One last question. Do you know how many parking spaces are in Executive Muse now?
I don't have that number.
No. Okay. It's just a generic question. Okay.
So actually related to parking, if you're talking about that.
How many parking spaces are there right now?
Yeah, so, well, not there, but so for here, you have one parking space for each bedroom, but there's also supposed to be guest parking, right?
Yeah, I believe the ordinance says that can be determined by the Board of Supervisors or the
Yeah.
Board of Commissioners.
Right.
Mr. Clellan, you can talk to their experience a little bit about the number of complexes that they operate, the appropriate parking that they see appropriate. As we indicated previously, there's also some transit-oriented elements of this project. So we've designed this in a fashion we believe it's got sufficient parking for what the unit count is. But I can certainly have him expound on that a little bit more if you would like. talk a little bit about parking demand?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, the ordinance requirement is, as noted, it's the greater of 1.5 per unit or 1 per bedroom, which the 1 per bedroom in this instance ends up being the greater value. That's what we're providing. As George, I think the number was 1.56 per unit then, as it worked out. We tend to see, and we operate thousands of apartment units in the Tri-County area, as well as other areas of the country. And because they are all 1 and 2 bedroom units, there are no 3-bedroom units in this project, we do tend to see a number lower than 1.5 per unit, usually like 1.3, 1.4. So we do feel that this parking at this ratio is more than sufficient for this project, which includes guests and visitors, because some people are there when guests aren't, and weekends people leave, other people come. So on an overall site average basis, it works out very well.
Okay, next we'll move to engineering. Does anybody on the board have any questions due to engineering with Mr. Hartman?
Just one question. The testimony referred to the spacing between the buildings.
Yes.
Can we review that? Was it 25 or is it 40?
40.5, which up on the screen here, and in between the two buildings, that's
25 is the requirement, 40.5 is what's provided.
How about the spacing between the townhouses? What do we got? That's 40.5.
40.5.
Can you zoom into that a little bit, George? Mr. Hartman, sorry. Okay. And that's to the outer faces on those two.
Yeah, that's what it looks like.
Two buildings.
Yeah, the two closest, because that's not a, flat wall. So
Yeah.
the two closest points.
All right.
At a previous meeting, Commissioner Peruzzi had questioned the garages and the spacing of those buildings. Was there any consideration given to his testimony, his comments, and what were they?
I believe there was some comments maybe about just the, functionality or access in and out of the garages. Is that what we're-
Creating space.
I don't remember exactly what the comment was. So.
Well, I honestly, neither do I, but I can tell you that it's the exact same plan configuration as before.
Oh, yeah, I was gonna say, the layouts haven't changed.
Yeah, so I remember it being more about green space, some open organization between the buildings, That's what it was. Trying to free space up a little bit to allow these tenants to have more clear access from the front side than from that alley basically that you're creating. I think the specific request is rotate the buildings to have the parking in between the two instead of out on the drive aisle, to have more of a public facing street. Didn't happen. I didn't expect it to.
Yeah. So, I mean, also as far as some of the intent of what you're talking about, creating green space, we kind of effectuated that more so by relocating the drive aisle in an effort to save some of those heritage trees and other existing trees. We appreciate the comment on flipping the layout. It's just something that I think it kind of turns the whole project on its head, and we probably look at something completely different then. So we tried to take some of the intent of what you were saying and put it into the revisions, just not maybe 100% to what you had suggested.
Yeah, and I do appreciate the couple of heritage trees that you managed to work into the plan. When you quoted, and I apologize for this, but the plans that we got are illegible, so I can't read the numbers. In the table, what was the impervious that you provided versus the ordinance requirements?
The maximum is 65% per the ordinance, and we're at 63.9. The previous iteration of the plan, was 64.9. So we.
Right. You gave us 1 more percent.
We reduced it.
Yeah, thanks.
But we've reduced it, but we've also been looking at sidewalk connection. I mean, we've been trying to play off of certain different things and find areas to stay compliant with the ordinance. and also provide some of the additional comments that have been provided by various, commissioners, planning agencies to try to work all that out.
Yeah, and I appreciate all that, and I can definitely see, you've worked out some of those pedestrian connections. We've got sidewalks where we need them. We've agreed to sidewalks where we requested them. You gave us an extra percentage point. I do, however, reflect back to the MCPC commentary, basically in their overall comments at the end. Are you meeting the requirements outlined by ordinances? Yes. I still stand by the fact that the intention of those ordinances is not being felt, and Mr. Hartman, this is not directed to you, this is just a project in general, right? The concept of preserving green space, of creating connectivity to the community, what were the other things that were in here? Common space, trees, all that stuff. It really just doesn't feel that way on here, and there's been a couple allusions to public transportation. I believe this falls well outside of the walking distance for the train station. So I don't even understand why that's part of the conversation, to be quite frank. Maybe there's a bus line on Blair Mill or something that you're...
It's part of the conditional use requirements. They talk about having shopping centers, public transportation in the immediate vicinity. I mean, immediate can be, a broad stroke, I guess.
Yeah.
And there are bus lines
Right.
on Blair Mill Road that get you to the train station.
Yeah. So I get it. Overall, I mean, I appreciate the renderings that you provided too. I think it does definitely add some character and helps me understand what's going here. I still think though, it's meeting the intention of what we're trying to create, and it's a little too dense. And one of you said it yourself. You're right at the marks, right? Like you're as dense as you can get, less by a percentage point, or 0.1 of a percentage point in some instances. And I think I appreciate the gusto of trying to get as much as you can on this parcel, but it's a little too much in my opinion.
Yeah, so I think the other part to understand here is this is obviously, it's a redevelopment of the existing site, so we're constrained a little bit in that. But also when you're talking about green space, we may be at the maximum for what's permitted for this use, but if this were redeveloped as an industrial site or another commercial site in the industrial district, you're going to see higher percentages that are permitted. Generally, those are, it can be, I don't know, 80, 90%, something like that. So while it may be 63 to 65 for what's permitted under the project, if it were to remain as an office complex, you may be able to see 85 or 90. So there is an improvement overall, I think, from the available green space that you could see as otherwise developed.
I 100% agree with you, but I would be remiss to not bring these points up to you because you are the applicant in front of us at this point. So
absolutely.
If it was a different development going on in this parcel, I would have the same comments to them if they were pushing the boundaries as far as they could possibly go. So
I think they're fair comments, certainly.
So I want to reiterate those comments too. So I do feel like this does not meet the requirements, and the MPC, Montgomery County Planning Commission letter specifically says we feel that the development as it is currently designed does not meet these criteria. I just don't see anything regarding open space, common space, not enough shade trees. What's that?
Gathering trails.
Gathering trails. So I guess, I wasn't here when we put this ordinance in place, but this is an industrial zoning area. So this development is not within a community or a neighborhood that has other open space or has a neighborhood park that these residents can walk to. So I imagine that's part of the reason for these requirements, and I don't feel like this plan meets the requirements.
So, I think one of the key pieces of what that ordinance is attempting to do is it requires it to be an underutilized or underappreciated asset, part of the district, and then providing an opportunity to redevelop it. Like I said, otherwise you may have either vacant buildings.
I hear you, but develop it in a certain way.
Sure, and I think as we went through kind of a lengthy list of all of the requirements and how we indicated that we meet each one of those. So I really do believe that this project complies with each of the requirements of the ordinance.
Yeah, I don't see that.
Let's talk.
I don't see the open space. I don't see gathering areas. What did you say? Let's talk about.
I'm waiting for you to done. I thought you were done.
I'm sorry, yeah, go ahead.
They talked about gathering areas internally and towards the public. So that's the one where they said it lacked. Exterior, like stuff that was on the edge of the property. But we do have opportunities for contributions because we have our cross-county trails right down the street.
We do, but I think it's important there's something here. I mean, we learned during COVID how important it is to have a space outside that you can go to and that looks open and feels open and natural, and it's part of the requirements for this conditional use, so I think it's important.
So if I may offer just a thought on that.
Sure.
The courtyards in between the H's of the building at our other projects are wildly popular with the residents. As you see, it's adjacent to the pool courtyard, the dog park. We find those get very well utilized. And then as another kind of add-on to this conversation about not only pedestrian connectivity, I'm going to suggest a condition to you that you impose on us. So while we have sidewalks shown along Maryland Road, along our frontage at the top of the property, to your very point, it doesn't go anywhere. However, on the other side of Maryland Road, there is sidewalk all the way down to Whitmer Road, okay? And that connects very closely as you then take that up back towards Blair Mill to the power line trail. Okay, there's only one section.
Commerce, not Whitmer.
Commerce on that section, Whitmer on the other side.
Yeah, so there's a shortage of sidewalk.
There's a shortage of sidewalk on the other side of Maryland Road, conveniently on other property that we control. I would suggest that you impose a condition on us that we finish that piece of sidewalk so that these residents can access the power line trail, which gives not only the entire township a connection, but this property specifically.
So that connectivity is lacking on both sides of Maryland Road.
There's no sidewalk on this side of Maryland Road going down. There's a complete sidewalk on the north side of Maryland Road, but for that one property.
Right. Okay.
Well, what Pete's saying is, so on the other side of Maryland Road, normally in the context of this application, you wouldn't be able to require us to put sidewalks on other people's property. You can't do, on that side of on the other side of Maryland Road, he's indicating they have control of properties to finish that sidewalk. And he's willing to accept as a condition in this application that they'll finish that sidewalk to provide connections to the power line trail. It's not common that you have that opportunity because the developer doesn't usually own or control other off-site properties like that.
On your condition.
Not the first time it happened here.
It's probably the first time it was offered though, right?
Since you're offering a crosswalk across to get to that sidewalk,
Oh, yes, as part of this, we would do that.
because they got to get to that side of the street.
Exactly, yes.
Okay, because, and that would be inclusive of a handicap on both sides of the street?
Of course, yeah.
Okay, that's,
Well, again, I don't expect you to answer here, but the warrants for a traffic light at that intersection. It was one of our most constantly cited for running the stop sign. So, we could do that in land development, I get it.
Yeah, I mean, but I think that either it does or it doesn't. So the counts will bear what they do, and we'll continue to work through that. And if it warrants it, I don't think we have another choice.
We have an expert in the room, though. He can tell us what the warrants are.
I will say we didn't specifically evaluate the traffic signal warrants because the intersection operates at adequate level of service. Typically, we only look at the signal warrants if there's deficiencies at the intersection, the unsignalized intersection, and you're looking to approve it and add capacity, then you look to add a signal. However, hearing your comments tonight, we certainly can evaluate the signal warrants as we go through land development.
And historically, we could provide you with the number of citations issued for running that stop sign. So whether it's signalized traffic light or signalized pedestrian crossing, we'd like to, that's a discussion to have later.
Certainly.
Okay, can we talk snow? I'm looking at the grading plan, C401. And if you have a foot of snow on that property, there's no way that area is going to hold it all, especially in the 90-degree section, well, here. I don't know if you want to show this, but right here in this corner, according to the grading plan, it goes down and it's going to dump on the back of the Lightbridge Academy. If you put it there, it's something you need to consider because you can't create a problem for another property from your own property. Water is, I'm just saying that it just looks like it's graded downward, and I don't know how much snow you can actually put on that green area.
I mean, just to respond to, I guess, the grading comment, that green area is intended to be a stormwater basin, so it's not just sloping towards Lightbridge Academy.
So would salt water affect that? If you have salt and snow and you put it on top of there? How's that going to affect your retention basin, or whatever you want to call it? Sorry, George.
Yeah, is that a common practice to put the snow in the stormwater basin?
I think the common practice is to put it where you can, and I think operationally, they're gonna figure out if they've got places to put it, and if we get,
Well, first, the snow lands in the stormwater basin to begin with, so it's not necessarily.
Some does.
Not worried
Right,
about
No,
this
but
is
I
a
mean,
lot
it's not
more.
like we control where, so it's not like snow can't be in the stormwater basin.
Yeah,
But
but it's
if-
different than dumping it from the
But-
whole community.
Snow that has been covered with salt, and then you push it into that stormwater basin, that's what I'm talking about. So, sorry, that's,
Yeah.
the first thing that popped into my head, so.
I mean, there's gonna be, a layer of planting soil that's gonna filter things out, in the basin itself. And I think, just generally speaking, for the snow discussion, that property management is going to handle it however they need to so that they can keep some on site, or if they have to do something else with it, they'll do something else with it.
You're gonna have, well, I guess our engineer will have to handle that question, because you just can't put it in your retention basin.
Well,
You can put snow in there,
yeah,
as
I
long as
think
you don't have anything in it.
I think there's a couple of different, there's obviously, we believe we have more than adequate parking, so if it has to go, depending on the level of snow, we have a big green area where we can
That's what I
dump it.
wanted to hear.
And if they want to have, it hauled off site, they may have to consider that. It's going to be ultimately an operational question. I think what the ordinance is speaking to, there's got to be at least somewhere, some opportunities on site, and I think we provide that.
Okay. My other question is about the planning commission's current newsletter or the report that I guess on the property, on the plan. Couple questions about gathering spaces. I think this does look too much asphalt and not enough. I know Cheryl talked about what pre-COVID or you didn't think about it, but since COVID took over, and everything else that we've been doing downtown and outside is talking about gathering spaces. Even that new development that, what's it called, Willow on the other side?
Willow Point?
Yeah. I mean, they have a lot more space for gathering for the people and residents, especially if they don't have a park built
Right.
inside of it.
Right, it's a lone community.
You should just understand that. I mean, that's a priority for us. And I guess if we want to make this work, something's got to happen. Not a whole, something has to happen. I'm not saying nothing, but I'm saying something.
Any other questions from this board?
Well, I don't have a question exactly. That's going to sound off the wall. But you see the parking lot, the Walmart parking lot? You know who lives there? Homeless people. And Walmart has been very tolerant in allowing them to park there and not make an issue out of it. And then down the front, those Jamestown Village Apartments, last month, there were 30 people on limited income being evicted. So we have a homeless problem in this township, and actually all around. And one thing is, if we tried to do something about it, people are gonna come from everywhere to be in our township. But I see these developments going up and up and up, and we never deal with this problem. But I'm not asking for a solution, but I would like to think about that. How could you help us with this problem? Because walking in the community, first of all, there's a wall along that side and vegetation. And if you walked into that parking lot, you feel very uncomfortable, I think. Anyway, I don't want to say anything to make it even harder for the people without homes. That's my attitude.
I have a couple of questions.
Thank you.
I don't know if it was Mr. Babbitt or if it was who referred to the current residential elements that are in that area. Okay. Well, I have a couple questions for Mr. Babbitt then. So you talked about the only other residential pieces were the Willow Point
apartments, right.
So we have, how far did that analysis go? We have residential at apartments at the bottom of the hill on Maryland and Commerce, and we have a huge apartment complex right across the street and on Maryland Road, across from, pretty much 2 doors away from the Willow Point.
They're not exactly adjacent to this complex. Neither is Willow Point for that matter, but it's only one property away.
I just wondered how you drive that analysis. Other questions I have for you is, how many EDUs do they currently have on site, and how many new EDUs are required?
That's probably a question better addressed.
I was going to say.
Well, but you were the one that testified that it doesn't impact the sanitary system, are you not?
I did in general, yes, but I think specific
I
number of
thought you would
EDUs.
have to have that information to understand whether it impacted or not.
Well, no, the information that I have is that the proposed development will not unduly burden the sewer system.
So
No.
that's why I asked you, the person that testified to that, how many EDUs are currently there?
I don't know.
I don't know the existing number of EDUs at the top of my head. Obviously, there's some amount of EDUs that are allocated to the property. We've had preliminary conversations with the sewer authority. I believe we have a will-serve letter out. I don't remember if we have one or not, but I know we've had conversations, and we know that there is adequate capacity at the sewer treatment plant.
How do you know?
We've had conversations with them, and
He testified that, it wasn't going to impact it. So I actually thought I was going to get solid numbers.
we have the numbers. I don't have it with me tonight.
But without obviously you've talked and they have told you they have the capacity to do this project.
Yes.
Okay.
And again, that's also something that will be evaluated, and the proper planning module approvals, if necessary, will be handled at land development.
You couldn't build it without it, so.
Right, we're not building something that
Well-
that doesn't have adequate sewer.
They could have to expand the plant if it wasn't there, or do something to increase the capacity of the plant. If
Yes,
they didn't have it.
But they would have to.
The
That's what- that
question
was my-
was
that
that
was
they don't
my
know the
question.
numbers, okay? So they can't really testify that they know for sure.
Any other questions from the board? Any questions from the public on this? Okay.
Comment also?
Yep.
Questions on comment?
Yep.
Thank you.
Well trained.
It is, thank you. Maureen A. Kuhn, K-U-N-D. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. It's mostly comments, maybe a couple of questions thrown in there. I appreciate all the testimony and the presentation and reports from the previous witnesses. My first concern is that the commissioner for that ward is not here tonight, and I understand he can't watch via Zoom.
No, the Zoom does not work to here. They're having a problem with the internet. We were just told when we got here.
Okay,
So
so
he might have been trying.
So he is not hearing any of this, or he is?
That I do not know. That's the technical end that somebody in that room could tell
Okay.
us.
That's a concern, because that's the commissioner for that ward
Yes.
where this is going. So
Yes.
that's a big concern.
Yes.
And I think a lot of people can appreciate that. Other than the situations involving the traffic and the drainage, I want to talk about the other services for the residents of this proposed complex, as well as the numerous other complexes that have popped up in Upper Moreland Township. Specifically, our emergency services. We have how many more residents proposed for this complex, which is, let's see, we have 593 additional residential units since 2019. That includes the station at Willow Grove, Willow Point, and Annabelle Garden. Then let's add the college and the student housing of College Station Apartments and College Station Apartment North. That's about 1,000, give or take. And now we're talking about Federal Realty across the street at 270 units, Executive Muse, 272, potentially Spring Hill Suites, 155. So that's another 697, give or take. Since 1994, this police department has decreased from 40 police officers to 38. So since 1994 until today, 29 years later, we're down 2 cops. And what is the proposal, along with the police department and the other emergency services, to take care of the existing residents in this township, as well as the potential new residents coming into this township? I've read Chief Block's reports over the last several months. Our responses for calls are up 17% some months 14%, and it's rolling steady at 14% since 2020. And we're still down at 38 cops. Why aren't we back up to full force at 40 cops? If we have all these new residents, all this new tax revenue, why don't we have 40 cops? Why don't we have additional services to take care of all these new residents with all these new apartment buildings? So it's not just this one that's being proposed tonight. That's my concern. In addition to that, I read through some of the other reports from Chief Block that he supplies to the board and to the public every month, and I'm seeing the uptick in other crimes. In 2023, in August of 2023, we had 11 robberies. 2022, we had 2. So in August of 2023, 11 robberies. 2022, we had 2. That's an uptick. That's an uptick that cannot be overlooked. And I looked at the July reports. I'm just going to look back comment on the last 3 months. And we've had firearm violations occurring in this township. There's an uptick in that. Most recently, actually, one of the officers was commended. A traffic stop recovered a gun that was used in a homicide in Philadelphia. So we're getting a lot of traffic, criminal element coming from the city into the suburbs. That is not a mystery. Everybody knows that. So if that's what we're getting, and they are taking evasive maneuvers to get out of the township after they commit the crimes, recklessly endangering other people, I think it should be addressed. In addition to all these new buildings, all these new apartment buildings, why don't we have enough police coverage? My guess is that some of these men and women are frazzled and being worn thin. Like I said, back in 1994, we were holding steady at 40 cops. So in the last 20 years, we have lost 2 spaces, 2 cops, and we're gaining all this population. And what is being done between police, fire, and ambulance to cover the residents of this township, as well as the future residents of this township, which are going in Executive Muse, across the street from the municipal building, potentially Spring Hill? What's being done? And why aren't these positions being filled? Why is and the revenue, my guess is there with all these new residents in the township since 2019. So I guess bottom line is I'm wondering, will this plan of high density and some of the other plans of high density that are in the pipeline, how far is it going to go before we exhaust and deteriorate our services that the townships of the residents of this township are entitled to and paid for? Thank you very much.
I would like to comment on that.
Perfect.
Um,
And Mr. Skull, you made a perfect comment about the homeless.
Yeah,
How many responses did the police have? Maybe Mr. Block, or Chief Block can answer it. How many responses do we have
Right.
to the homeless now compared to
Right.
even 4 years ago?
and you know, during Cold Blue, they sleep in the lobby of the police station.
know that.
Because we don't have any place for them.
I know that.
Okay. But my comment is, I think I'm correct that the police budget is 40% of the township's budget. 40%.
Okay.
And a year or two ago, when we were negotiating the contract, the average salary of a policeman in Upper Moreland Township, $145,000 a year. The highest salary was $190,000, and the lowest salary was $110,000. So why don't we have more cops? Cost, pension costs, salary costs. It's amazing we still have 38.
So with the generated property tax, with all these new residences in the township, between all the apartment complexes, just quick look, the station at Willow Grove was $148,000. The Willow Grove Point, which is across the street from the one that was presented tonight, was over $207,000. That was generated property tax.
That's 3 cops.
Okay, and we need 2 more. And we've needed 2 more. We've needed 2 more for a long time. I was hired in 1990. In 1994, we brought on 4 more, and we were at the top number, 40 cops. Now we've had a 17% increase in calls, whether they're crimes, call for service, crashes, whatever. 17% increase, this increase in population, and we're still at 38 cops. I can't even address fire and ambulance at this point because I've been researching the police information side of it. So that's my comment.
I'm personally, I'm very sympathetic. I understand the problem. But when we raise taxes, we have to raise them for everybody, right?
Well, based on the revenue that's being received from all these new residences, it looks to me, I mean, these are round numbers, just things that I found that
So
this is 3 cops.
I think this is getting a little off
This
topic.
this is not really subject to the conditional use criteria.
Yeah.
I know the board appreciates your comments, 100%.
Very much so.
Yes.
Good statistics, thank you for bringing them. Oh, there's no but. We gotta move on to the topic.
Thank you for your many, many years of service here, too. That is a safety, public health and safety issue, which,
It is a safety issue,
Well,
but this is
for our
a
committee.
safety issue also.
but even without this, that you should bring it up at public health and safety.
I will. Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Or a budget meeting.
Anybody else want to speak on this issue? Yes.
Was sworn in?
I do. My name is Hillary Yoder, Hillary Yoder. I just had a question. When you guys testified that there was no undue burden to our school system, what research and data are you finding to prove that?
A number of months ago, I prepared a fiscal impact analysis, including the school district. And the number of public school students to be generated from this development is very low because typically 1- and 2-bedroom apartments generate very few school-age children. The number is 16 overall. I think it's about 20 school-age children, of whom about 16 will attend the public schools. So that translates to about 1 per grade throughout the district. That's not a terrible burden. The district population, the enrollment actually goes up and down by several kids every week just because people moving in, people moving out, and so forth.
Does that take into consideration the apartments that are planning to build across the street?
No.
Because those are 3-bedroom apartments.
Well, they're going to have to do their own fiscal impact analysis.
Has the board considered that? the impact of those 3-bedroom apartments in addition to these apartments?
We have to focus on this application right now.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to just comment that I have been a resident here for 12 years, and my daughters are in school, and every year their class sizes are increasing. We're up to 28 in class this year, and my daughter's in 5th grade. If we keep adding to our population, we're going to have to consider building new schools. Our schools are getting to be max capacity. We have something special in Moreland, and adding the population is, you guys are diminishing that special community feeling we have.
Every land development project that takes place in this township gets great consideration to the impact of the school system. And 1 and 2 bedroom apartments and dwelling units do not have those numbers too, and we do consider that.
Okay. Do we have a research on the need for more apartment buildings to our community? Is there like a great demand to live here that we are building 500 new apartments in this?
They're all full.
The ones at the station are full?
Station was 97%.
So
all the apartment, but there's actually waiting lists at Willow Point. I know they have a waiting list of 100. So yeah, they're filling these places. I don't know where they're working, but they're filling them.
Applications for apartments and condos statewide, well, in this 5-county district are just off the charts.
Okay, I guess I just want to echo the sentiments of the previous speaker that I'm concerned for the emergency personnel and our school system. That's all.
Thank you.
I would just say that, builders can build. We can't outlaw builders. We can't say, you're bringing too many people into the township.
We're building 200 residents, 200
You have to use the mic.
in one spot.
We only try to control it. Zoning.
Okay, any other comments on this hearing?
If I can just add, since Mr. Babbitt referenced his fiscal impact, I just asked that it be included as A10, and I'll provide additional copies to the board.
Okay. Any other closing remarks that you would like?
One more comment.
Come on up.
I want to start with a comprehensive plan for 2040. In gathering information, input from the community on the comprehensive plan, some of the items that residents brought up were, what do respondents like most about living in Upper Moreland? And among other things, they say residents use terms like quiet, small-town character, and safe to describe the township. Survey respondents named flooding as the important environmental issue in the township. 27% say their property has been impacted by flooding. Regarding the environment, environmentally responsible site design and shade trees were respondents' highest environmental priorities. In terms of the form of development that respondents wanted to see, apartments or condos were the least favorite choice by a significant amount. So that was the input. Another interesting fact in the comprehensive plan was that the forecasted growth in residents for 2040 was 881 people from the time of this report. And that's what the plans were based on, accommodating 881 people, and how could we do that? And as Maureen highlighted, we have, Willow Point has 246 units since this survey was done and this plan was done. 246 units at Willow Point with an approved additional 60 units yet to be built. Willow Grove Shopping Center, 261 units have been approved. Federation Housing, 54 units. Station at Willow Grove, 275. 230 Fairhill, 132 apartments. That brings us up to 1,028 units. Now, if we take 1.5 is the multiplier for how many people that represents, which I believe is a very conservative multiplier. That would give us 1,542 people. If we add this development in 272 units times 1.5, that gives us a total of 1,950 residents. So we're already well past 2040 in the development of this township. I believe that the idea to use some of the underutilized industrial land to build the additional units was meant to accommodate 881 people, but we're already well above that. In addition, this particular site is heavily wooded, and I haven't heard anyone mention that in terms of, does this go along with the character of our area and the goals of the comprehensive plan? And this developer is proposing to clear cut this property and save a few of the legacy tree, whatever the trees. Heritage trees. Otherwise, it's being clear cut. The environmental impact of that is astounding. This is probably the only property that could be developed that has such heavily wooded land on it. I know I'm not the only resident who sees wildlife running in the streets because they have nowhere else to go. In addition, the noise where I live in Sycamore Village, when I moved in 2017, I rarely heard traffic noise. Now, because of all the development near the turnpike, I hear traffic noise all the time. The additional removal of these trees will further impact the noise buffering that wooded areas provide. Even if there were additional trees added to this land, it does not make the same difference that a completely natural area provides, and that's something that the Planning Commission noted as well. So in addition to no open space, we're losing a forested area by approving this unit, this development. And I don't think that that is in keeping at all with the comprehensive plan, with the intent. Nor do I feel that the character of this development is within the character of our community. And the density of the units is not in keeping with a suburban environment. I wonder what is going to happen when our township, along with all the other neighboring townships, have built these units all for the same demographic. All for the same demographic. What is going to happen? I don't see that ending well. Thousands upon thousands of units for the same people. The professionals who make good money, who have good jobs, and don't have kids. How many are there? I don't see this ending well. I don't see it ending well to have a development also so dense that you have apartments in a narrow courtyard looking down at the dog park and hearing barking, and nowhere for people to gather this quiet, and sound traveling to and from units. So in addition to the environmental impact, I don't think this is going to be a good place to live once the newness wears off. I don't see what the benefit to our community is. I'm not seeing this. We know that there will be a traffic impact regardless of what anyone tells me. 272 units is going to impact the traffic. We have the wildlife cost. We have the quality of life with additional pollution, noise pollution, additional pollution from people using more cars, more heat, more air conditioning, more trash. All of those externalized costs go somewhere, and eventually they end up impacting our quality of life and the environment. So, in closing, I'm saying that this does not go along with the intent of the comprehensive plan, and I see many negative impacts to our community. And we have already gone well past the number of people that the comprehensive plan and the additional development was supposed to cover. So where do we end? Where do we stop? What is enough?
Thank you for your comments.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this? Closing comments?
Yeah, just briefly. This is a project that we've been before the various boards and commissions numerous times over the past months. We've had a number of meetings with staff and consultants with respect to the heritage trees and woodland areas. Our arborist was out on the site looking at those areas, determining which trees were viable to be saved and should be saved. And back when you adopted this ordinance in 2015, the intent was to take an underutilized property and redevelop it as an apartment use with certain conditions. And this is exactly what that property is. It's almost completely vacant at this point, and you're taking it out of the industrial category and redeveloping it subject to the conditional use criteria, which are much more stringent than any other development in the LI district would allow. And we've established that we have, I think, met that specific criteria. There's still a long process here. There's some conditions we've agreed to, and we're still willing to work with township and staff as we refine the traffic analysis and sidewalk and park connections, et cetera. But I think from this initial stage of conditional use approval, we've met the criteria that we're required to in order to get us moving forward to land development. So we ask that you authorize your solicitor to work with us to finalize some conditions and get this ready for an approval, hopefully.
Okay.
Can I ask a question to that, one of your statements? I know that it's a very vacant property at this point. Mm-hmm. What was the occupancy when it was purchased?
We said, what was 77% in 17? Yeah, and it's declined from then.
Okay. With that, you have the conditions that were presented by them.
I have, yes.
Okay. I just take a motion from here to close this hearing.
I'll make a motion to close this hearing.
Second.
Okay, we have a second. Is that correct? That's all we need now.
That's what you need, yes.
Okay. Any discussion on the motion? Okay.
If you want.
What, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying, if there was some other evidence or some other information you needed, I recommend that you continue the hearing, but hearing that there is none, then I recommend you close.
I think all the things that we are looking at, if this would go through, is land development issues.
Yeah. So that's my point, right? So these conditional use applications are tricky situations because a lot of the questioning that we had this evening has literally nothing to do with conditional use. And for the sake of conditional use, the applicant has responded accurately and willingly in the positive to all of the criteria that were placed before them. The only thing that I see here, however, that is up for debate is maximum residential unit density shall not exceed 18 units per gross acre of lot area unless increased by conditional use approval in accordance with the subsection. And we're allowed to take that as a conditional use of 18 up to 25. This property has been densified to, I believe you said 23.
23, right.
So that is above and beyond the basic criteria of this conditional use permit. So what I would request that the board thinks about, and maybe we put this as a separate item on our motion, or a condition on our motion, is to vote on the density, if we're allowed to do this.
Well, what I would recommend is, it's up to you. So you can close the hearing, that's one step. You have 45 days to issue a written decision, right? Your next meeting is November, let's see, 13th, which I believe is 42 days, if I counted correctly, from that. We could go ahead, work out whatever conditions we want, then you could vote that night, both on the conditions and, you know, a written decision that night, and then everything should be tied up.
Yeah, that would be acceptable to us. I would note, I think you're correct.
We can, you guys can go ahead and talk, you know, review the conditions beforehand, give input. We can go back and forth to Mr. McHugh and talk about that. I'll get Ms. Richmond's contact information, but she has party status, so she should be consulted. And that's what I would do, as we've done in other conditional uses.
I would say close the hearing.
Yeah.
Have that, and then any other concerns, it could be, we could take them to Sean, and he would figure out.
Right.
We're not voting
Yeah.
on this tonight. It's not even on the agenda.
Yeah, you don't need to vote on this tonight. We can work out the conditions, have them flushed out. There can be feedback back and forth. If there were additional conditions that you thought about at the hearing and stuff, I could bring them to Mr. McHugh.
Okay.
And the conditions we've agreed to, I think they require some
They
working
need to
out
be
of the
flushed out.
language.
They're just
It's
kind
not-
of very raw.
Yes.
Yes.
Your department.
Yeah.
Okay, with that, we will close the hearing. We have first, a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against, abstain? So moved. Approved. Okay, now we're going to get into our regular meeting.
Okay.
Okay, regular meeting, public comments, non-agenda items only, just a generic comment. None? Okay, treasurer's activity report.
I'll make a motion to approve the treasurer's activity report for September 2023.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any questions? Any public questions? Okay, all in favor, say aye. Oh, did I ask public question?
No, you didn't.
Okay, public questions on that. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against? Opposed?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes for September 11, 2023.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any comments from the commissioners? Any comments from the public? Without any, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against? Abstain? So moved.
Next is,
We're going to go to committee recommendations, finance, administration.
the committee recommends the motion to approve resolution R 2023-21, authorizing the hire of John Bates to the positions of Township Director of Finance, Assistant Township Manager, effective October 5th, 2023, and appointing the same as Assistant Township Secretary to the Upper Township Board of Commissioners, effective November 6th, 2023.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion from commissioners?
Yeah, do we have to make a motion to allow Randy to retire first?
We don't want to vote on that one. He'll be mad.
Not that we have anything against you, John.
Any public comments? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Against, abstain, welcome, John.
Okay, we have a couple appointments and reappointments. 1B, motion to approve the appointment of Joseph Packus as a Ward 3 representative on the Parks and Rec Advisory Council to fill the vacancy left by Thomas Saney and serve a new 2-year term that will expire May 5th, 2025.
Second.
Motion, we have a second. Any commissioner comments?
Is Joseph here? Okay.
He was here the other night.
Yeah.
Okay. Any public comment? None? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against? Abstain? Approved?
Lynn Weaver. All right. We have a motion to appoint Lynn Weaver as a member of the Human Relations Commission to fill the vacancy left by George Rossler and to complete the current 3-year term that will expire December 31st, 2023.
Second.
We have a motion. We have a second. Any commissioner comments?
This is a short term because, but in December, you will be reappointed for a new 3-year term. Sorry, but that's the way it works.
If you survive.
Any commissioner comments other than that? Any public comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against? Abstain? Welcome. Congratulations.
Next is the motion to approve the reappointment of Anne Marie Magnan as a Ward 6 representative of the Parks Rec Advisory Council to serve a new 2-year term that will expire August 4th, 2025.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any commissioner comments? Any public comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against? Abstain? Approved.
Motion to approve the reappointment of Joseph Kostowski as an alternate member on the Police and Fire Civil Service Commission to serve a new 6-year term to expire August 7th, 2029.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any questions from the commissioners? Questions from the public?
Andy, how you say his name, you know? Okay.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against? Abstain? Approved?
Next is F is a motion to approve the reappointment of Michael Davido as a police officer representative on the Police Pension Fund Committee to serve a new 3-year term that will expire August 3rd, 2026.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any commissioner comments? Any public comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against? Abstain? So moved.
Okay, next we have 3 appointments for the Local Appeals Board. Okay, motion to approve the reappointment of William Alexander as an alternate member to the Uniform Construction Code Local Appeals Board to serve a new 5-year term to expire August 5th, 2028.
Second.
Motion second. Commissioner comments? Public comment? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against? Abstain? Approved?
Next, motion to approve the reappointment of Henry P. Jacklin as an alternate member on the Uniform Construction Code Local Appeals Board to serve a new 5-year term to expire August 5th, 2028.
Second.
Motion second. Commissioner comments? Public comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against?
Okay, I. Motion to approve the reappointment of Udo Marin as an architect member on the Uniform Construction Code Local Appeals Board to serve a new 5-year term to expire August 5th, 2028.
Second.
Motion, we have a second. Commissioner comments? Public comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against? Abstain? Approved.
Okay, the committee recommends the approval of general fund checks, beginning with check number 138827, ending with 139083, for a total of $1,222,301.01, with one void. Check number 138832. Escrow fund checks, beginning with check number 9681, ending with 9685, for a total of $139,873.36, with no voids. And liquid fuel fund checks, beginning with check number 3087, ending with 3096, for a total of $60,348.89, with no voids.
Second.
Motion, we have a second. Commissioner comments? Public comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against? Abstain? Approved.
Okay, just wanted to get the paint done. Okay, next is a motion to approve the contract with PR Commercial Painting for the exterior of the township building.
Second.
We have a motion. We have a second. Discussion.
This is just, this company has been provided a proposal for repairs to the township building. The attached proposal includes repairs to the trimmings, building trim and pillars. They are CoStar's approved, and they are submitted this proposal under the CoStar's contract number 008E32995.
Okay, just so everybody knows, the contractor is PR Painting, and I think we were going to do not to exceed 100,000 for all repairs on the outside of the building.
Agreed.
Public comment? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 Against, abstain, approved.
That concludes business for finance and administration.
Okay, community development, Ms. Spearn.
Good evening, thank you, Commissioner McFadden. Community Development Committee has a few action items this evening. We got them here, hold on. Okay, Community Development Committee recommends a motion to, we have no code enforcement issues, no land development or subdivision applications, and I do have the list of upcoming zoning hearing meetings first. And they are on the 12th. It's for 314 Silver, I believe the address is, and they are looking for a 6-foot setback as opposed to an 8-foot setback. And that hearing is going to be in this room on October 12th at 7:30. Yeah, 314 Silver Avenue, Willow Grove. Extend the non-conforming dwelling with a side yard setback of 6 feet instead of the minimum of 8 foot. Very good. All right. Now, back to the community development part of the meeting. The Community Development Committee recommends a motion to approve Resolution R 2023-22, granting approval to Walmart for a waiver of minimum of storage trailers, a number of storage trailers to allow 20 from October 3rd, 2023 through December 31st, 2023.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any comments from commissioners?
This has become a seasonal request for Walmart, and it gets approved by our fire marshal inspection prior to use, and they have been very compliant with all of our requests.
Any public comment? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against, abstain, approved.
The Community Development Committee recommends a motion to approve an access agreement between the township and Synergy Environmental Incorporated to sample and install monitoring wells as part of a groundwater delineation request at 214 Easton Road.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Discussion? This is the property next door is doing some wells to check their water. We are allowing them to check ours on our property, to drill some wells to check our property also.
It used to be a
Dry cleaner.
Dry cleaner.
Sure, yeah.
Historically, dry cleaners have used chemicals that have gone.
It's not a cost to us, they are doing it. Okay, any public comment? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against, abstain, approved.
Okay, the CDC committee recommends a motion to approve the advertisement of an RFP for the demolition of 101, 102, 103 Laurie Lane and 304 Surrey Lane.
Second.
Motion, we have a second.
Settlement from FEMA to demolish these buildings and contribute to Upper Moreland Township Open Space Plan.
Okay, any public comment? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against, abstain, approved.
Finally, the CDC committee recommends a motion to approve a proposal by Gilmore Associates for Parkside and Sycamore Avenue drainage improvements.
Second.
We have a Motion and a second. Discussions from the board?
Okay, so this is two residential properties, and since they have been built originally, the township has been dumping collected stormwater directly on residential properties without an easement. And it has come to a point where there's some remediation that needs to be required. And the Community Development Committee is recommending this.
Okay, any public comment? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against, abstain, so moved.
That concludes the business of the Community Development Committee. Thank you very much.
All right. Charles is not here. I'll do Public Health and Safety Committee for him. And again, I think he's not here because he couldn't get on Zoom. So motion to approve authorizing Township Solicitor's Office to advertise a draft ordinance restricting parking on New Street and Davisville Road that will be considered by the Board of Commissioners at the November 13th, 2023 regular meeting.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. This is, we had some complaints from residents. Our police department had gone out and checked with this. And we are going to put some no parking for, I forget, it might be 60 feet or whatever, that we talked about at the last meeting. Anything you want to add, Chief? We're okay with that?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Any public discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against? Abstain? So, approved. Motion to approve authorizing the Township Solicitor's Office to advertise a draft ordinance restricting parking at Willowbrook Drive and Edge Hill Road that will be considered by the Board of Commissioners for November 13th regular meeting.
Second.
We got a first, we have a second. This is the same scenario, bad intersection, some complaints. We went out, our police department thinks that it should be parked, or designated no parking next to the corner. Nothing else, right, Chief? No. Okay. Any public comment? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against? Abstain? Approved. Next, motion to approve advertisement for the proposed ordinance to amend Township's towing fee schedule. This was talked about in our last meeting. We had a towing company that approached the board. The board in our committee meeting said that we decided to change the amounts of only towing fees for when our police department calls it in to have a car towed or an accident. It is directed by our police department. For those scenarios, we do set the amounts, and we followed Abington pretty much to stay in line with other townships. So that's what was discussed in committee. Any other comments from the board?
Yeah, what was it from and to? It was 125 to 140 or something? I don't remember what it was. I just want to make sure it's
145.
145.
It's moving for the vehicles from 10,001 to 26,000 pounds. It's going from 125 to 175. Anything over 26,000 pounds will go to 225.
What was the first one?
It's going from 125 to 175.
That's for over 10,000.
10,000.
A regular car?
26,000. Anything 26,000 and one over will go to $225 a tow.
What's a car? That's what I was
The
trying to.
car is staying at 125. That's what Abington has. That's what our current ordinance is.
That's it. Thank you.
Okay.
How about are we changing any of the other fees, storage, cleanup?
The storage went up, I believe, to,
Okay, yeah, you don't have to go through, I just want to make sure we were looking at those.
yes, we looked at all of them,
Okay.
as well as the cleanup. That went up.
Cleanup's a big thing.
I'm sorry?
Cleanup's a big thing.
It is.
Sometimes it really is, yeah.
So our heavy, wasn't there a fee that was, did not have a total number? on our
We had no restriction on the heavy-duty fee. That's why
Yeah, you
the
never know.
recommendation from the committee was to go to 225.
Remember when that tractor trailer went down at Fitzwater Town,
Yeah.
611?
And then there's on exceptional situations, it would go to $125 an hour if you have something It's exceptional where they're going to be there for a long period of time.
Yeah, so I thought that number should have stayed open, and I made that comment during the committee meeting that, I know that, it is. We talked about Abington's fees, but on that particular one, I didn't think we could have a concrete number. How do we determine what's going to be the charge and what's going to be the $125 an hour? Who makes that?
It was recommended by the committee following the Abington ordinance. That's what was decided from committee.
What I'm saying is, you said in exceptional situations, a fee of $125 per hour could be used.
It's where you have a situation where the police are there for an extended period of time because you have an overturned tractor trailer, overturned truck, where there's extensive wincing that has to go on and whatnot. So there's no way to define each one of those
So
situations.
hook and go is a flat rate.
Sure.
And then, okay, I'm good with that.
Okay, any public comments? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against, abstain, so moved. Is that all I have?
That's it. Parks and Rec.
Yeah, it's just,
T.
into the advertisement, by telling we're done. Oh, too many papers.
I'm waiting for the invitation.
Glasses. Parks and
what?
Recreation.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Parks and Recreation Committee reports the following. A motion to approve an extension of the memorandum of understanding with Alan Myers for the use of staging area at Surrey Lane and Lancaster Place for the Warminster Bridge Repair Project.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any more discussion, commissioners? Any discussion from the public? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against, abstain, approved.
Secondly, a motion to approve the request from Farmstead Alliance for a bonfire at Farmstead Park for their annual fall event on Saturday, October 28th, 2023.
Second.
And this is becoming an annual event. The fire department's there. It's a lot of fun.
We have a motion and a second. Any public comment? None? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against, abstain, approved. Okay, last, any commissioner comments?
Yes. I recently became aware of some infrastructure grants for water and sewer, and I think we should take a look at them for a couple projects in the township. I think their deadlines are swiftly approaching, so maybe we could initiate some conversation about that tomorrow.
And if you'd forward them to Matt, so Matt can send them to us. Okay?
Yeah.
Good. Any other comments from the board? With that, we're adjourned.
Sorry, I lost.